gorgeous. The only problem was, he knew it. He knew it all too well. You could spot that kind of arrogance from a mile away. It was any wonder he sat alone at all. Though maybe he'd forced his neighbor to sit elsewhere on today of all days, just for this opportunity. I schooled my expression to keep the grimace off my face. No thanks. A guy like that would feel like he'd won something if a girl sat next to him, would view her choice like an invitation. While some girls might have counted it a fantasy to be one of only a few females at an all-boys school, and I'll admit, once upon a time, I would have counted myself among them. I'd made the decision long before arriving on Irish soil that I wouldn't give any amorous attentions the time of day. Because as soon as I finished my prison sentence here and graduated, I was heading straight back to the United States. There were only 2 other vacant seats in the classroom. One was beside a red-faced boy who was sweating so much dark stains were developing at his armpits. I looked toward my last hope. It was a desk by the window, and its sole occupant was the only boy who wasn't paying me an iota of attention. Instead, with the side of his face at rest against a loose fist, he stared boredly at the wretched grayness outside. It seemed he couldn't care less whether the new student at school was a boy, a girl, or a polka-dotted extraterrestrial. As such, and with great relief, I made my way toward him. There were snickers as I walked right past Mr. Movie Star, who tried to appear unfazed by the rejection and shot venomous looks at his classmates. I feigned obliviousness and continued on. I pulled out my chosen chair, the slightly rusted feet scraping against the tile, and it was only then that my new neighbor finally regarded me. My heart stalled. I was momentarily stunned by the look of him. There was a loveliness about his face, the kind you saw in paintings of angels. His brown hair was still wet, presumably from that morning's shower, and was styled in disarray, as if mussed by the storm winds outside. But it was his eyes that most gave me pause. They were the lightest blue eyes I'd ever seen, like 2 clear lakes on a summer day. He was clearly taken aback by my company, as if I'd yanked him out of a daydream. I offered him a tight but somewhat friendly and mildly apologetic smile as I sat. He stared back, his face completely devoid of expression. Then, without a single word, he went right back to looking out the window. I blinked, feeling as if I'd come right up against a wall. Okay, so much for a warm reception. Maybe he preferred having a table all to himself. But would it have killed him to be slightly less rude? Whatever, I'd survive. I decided to ignore him right back, and faced forward as Professor Foley began today's lecture. Soft clicking filled the room, and I was surprised to find several boys recording notes on netbooks or tablets. As far as technology went, my laptop back at my dad's house was the same one I'd been using for the past 6 years. My mom and I hadn't been poor by any means back in Colorado, but annually upgrading to the latest gadgets hadn't exactly been in the budget either. Mom. A spark of pain stabbed my heart like a thorn, and all at once the flashes of memory came. The pink, paisley scarf wrapped around my mom's head, the incessant beep of hospital machines, the seemingly endless tables of bouquets and sympathy cards. I pushed it all down immediately. Not here. Desperate for distraction, I went old school and pulled a spiral-bound notebook out of my backpack to copy down the equations Professor Foley was writing on the dry erase board up front, his marker squeaking against the white surface. He was teaching from a particular chapter in the class textbook, but he'd clearly forgotten he hadn't issued me a textbook of my own, and I wasn't about to raise my hand to request one. I'd just look off my neighbor's book for the time being. Except that when I bothered to look, I realized his textbook remained unopened in front of him. Even now...